this game is something where if you want to be in it for the long haul, if you want to do right by other people and genuinely help other people and help them change their businesses, and as a byproduct of that change their life, it's not going to be easy, right? There's going to be ups and downs. Like, it really is a lot harder and it takes a lot longer than you think. But I also think like that's the beauty of it. If you want to grow as a person, be an entrepreneur, because it'll force you to grow.
3, 2, 1.
Dude, that was good.
All right. Here's to a
great podcast. Great chat.
Yeah, great podcast recording.
Shout out Endo, the boy Jake.
It's my first time trying it. I've seen it at a Common, the run club that we both go to.
Dude, I love recovery drinks. But I love recovery drinks and I love sparkling water, so it's kind of like the best of both worlds. And
does it have anything else in it besides flavor?
So this one, I don't know about these ones. It just has like, this one's just a sparkling water. I do know that they have like the THC ones as well.
Yeah.
Which are, I've tried them. They're pretty good as well. But these ones, like, I had an 11-mile run today, so being able to sit down and recover with something that also tastes good is just like prime to me. So. Jake's doing cool stuff over there, and so shout out Common Running.
So is that like, what's your go-to recovery drink or method after a run?
Yeah, so if I'm going on like a long run and then I'm trying to get into that recovery, I'm a huge sweater, so electrolytes are like massive for me. So I'll do anything from just a bottle of water with salt, that's not iodized, and then I'll also have maybe I try to stay away from Gatorade just because like there's a lot of like sugar in there, but if I can just get like something natural, something clean, I'll do that as well. Using some GNM Sport, Nick Bear, he's the founder of that brand. It's packed with electrolytes, but typically
actually two of my friends worked for BPN as on the video team, and now they do their own thing, but that's kind of like interesting how big BPN has gotten, and
it's crazy. Like, and to think like, he's from, within a stone's throw away from here.
He is.
It's just, like,
really?
It's crazy. Yeah, he's I think Palmyra or Hershey area. So
I didn't even know that.
In the area, so, obviously out in Texas now, but he's
really got it together in terms of branding and marketing. It's really, because he has his own podcast and all of the content that they do, and pretty inspirational for sure.
I know. That's one of the biggest things I've taken from it. Like, obviously I love the fitness aspect of it and their products, but just the fact that like, hey, he's literally from 15-20 minutes away from here and was able to do something that I think is pretty spectacular, and he's able to exceed quote unquote expectations of someone that is from a small town or growing up in a rural area, if you will. So it's just cool to see that.
Yeah, I think that's a cool part of any brand, is when it's important that you can see yourself in it, if and it like has to resonate with you in some way. So if that's a detail that maybe that can translate over into our own like marketing strategies, or just something to think about, I guess.
I 100% agree with that. It's almost as if the messaging and everything you're doing is leading to what's actually being said. So the video stuff, like, he's not doing the video for the sake of the video, right? Like, there's a message behind it, there's a purpose of it. And something that I like from him specifically is he talks about like just being on brand and being on mission. Like, everything they do, from making their products to filming, is for a mission. And that's why we love Run Club, Common Run Club. Shout out Kieran. He's created an environment where like, it's not just about the running or the videos, but like the community. Like, everything's built around that community. And like, I think he just got a tattoo. It's like "Move the Line" on his thigh. And I was like, that's super cool, because it's like, now it's part of a mission and part of a brand identity where moving the line. So it's whether you're running for the first time or you've done 10 marathons, like everyone coming out doing their best and then doing it in an aspect with community, I think is just super cool. And like those brands stand out, like a BPN or to me like Common, like having that brand, but also everyone knows what Common is for, right? And everyone knows what a BPN is for, and obviously there's countless others out there, but from a marketing standpoint, from a brand standpoint, like it's just amazing what they're able to accomplish with something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of takeaways from, I think, observing successful brands. Like, as an entrepreneur, if you're starting a new business, can seem like really daunting. How do you go about getting followers or building a community or having a mission statement? I just think you can learn a lot from looking at brands that you feel connected to and getting to the root of why is that? Why do I want to be a part of that? And then apply that to your own business. So, it's fascinating for sure. But I think a good place to start would be back at the beginning. So we met, I think has to be, it was over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago,
almost
but
2 years ago,
so we were both, working on, I don't know what you were working on, but I was editing. We were both at a coffee shop and we struck up a conversation. You asked me about my editing and you told me about what you were doing. So let's start there. Like what prompted you to do that? And because I think, in-person networking is kind of getting lost in a way. And I think it's something that's worth doing and worth putting effort into and just sort of, being a confident person and putting yourself out there. And like, you never know where those kind of things can lead to. And, I'll be honest, after you did that, like I've done that a couple times with other people, like literally because you did that. And if I see other people with hard drives connected to their computer, I know that they're editing videos, like I'll go up and I'll ask like, hey, like, I don't mean to interrupt, but, like ask them what they're doing. I do video stuff too. And just, not necessarily from a selfish standpoint, like I want to get work or business out of it, but just, making new connections and friends, and maybe they can turn into colleagues. But talk about that a little bit. Like what led you to do that? And do you think that that's an important thing that people should just be focusing on, not just in business, but in life?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I almost forgot about like, how we met and then how kind of our friendship relationship started. But something from me that has been super important, in both the businesses that I've run up until this point is relationships. And I think the best clients and the best results come from the best relationships. And I remember the day now, it was like early January or late December, I don't quite remember, 2023. You're like at the table right next to me and grinding out some projects. And I noticed that, and I think the thing for me was like, oh, here's someone that seems to be doing something similar to me. Like they're obviously working at a coffee shop, so they're working remote. And I was like, I've always thought it was super cool, to meet other people that were kind of doing the similar or the same things to me, like more so on the same path. And like, I didn't even, at the time, I was like, it wasn't like, I want this guy to be my client. Like, I was like, I just think it's cool. I want to, build relationships and friendships. And, I've been an outgoing person since I was a kid, just running up to people and saying hi and things like that. So, I think that just enabled me to, just put myself out there, honestly. And I think that's, in a more broader sense, business in general is about putting yourself out there. And like, it wasn't even, that was the beginning of the year. And then you didn't become my client till I think middle or end of summer.
A couple months later, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think every time in between that, like I wasn't like, oh, you ready to buy? You ready to buy? Like I would check in periodically, and like you would kind of let me know like your situation. And like there is such a thing. Like obviously, I'm in the sales world. I'm in the marketing world. There's such a thing as like timing, right? And it's more so like, okay, is the client positioned, is the person you're trying to work with positioned in such a way in their business where if they do choose to work with you, spend the money with you, come on board with you, that they're going to get the most out of it. Because I think at the time, like, you were still growing your operation, and like it was basically you doing all the work. And one of the first conversations we had, we talked about, what what it might look like for you to, work with us, become my client, was like, okay, what does it look like if I have, hours of video to edit, and, I'm on site shooting here, there, and everywhere, but I'm getting, all these sales calls. Like, realistically, like, is that going to be a thing? And like, once again, I think the biggest thing for me was like, dude, I just want to help him as much as possible, whether he buys from me or not. Like, I just want to give him the best thing. And I think the thing that I had said to you was like, yeah, no, that's a completely like valid concern. Like, if I was in your shoes, I'd want to make sure that I have the ability to handle my responsibilities and then get the most out of the sales calls and the opportunities. Because obviously, like, you're paying for those at the end of the day. And I think we set it up in a way to where you were able to get to a place where you felt comfortable and confident enough in, the operation and bringing people on board to then go all in and then handle, those opportunities in that facet. And I think that's something that's like, when we were working together was like great about you. Like, although like, yeah, it was like business, and like we were working to get results and you're working to get more business with us, it was very much like a consultative thing where, I was like recommending things, and it wasn't out of like, okay, what's going to make me the most money or keep Dylan on this retainer, so to speak. And then eventually, like, you got to a point where like the inbound was like basically, your bread and butter, and you was like, hey, like, I'm getting so many inbound leads. And then we're like, dude, like, you're crushing it with inbound. Like, maybe it does make sense to stay into that route and keep going with it. And I mean, look at you now, you're growing, scaling, and it's cool to see like the progression go on and on. But I think going back to your initial question, like, just having people's best interest for who they are, not what they can give you or what they can do for you, is like, the best thing ever. Like, I mean, there's countless of agency owners out there, business owners, coaches, whatever, consultants. So it's like they just view everything as a transaction. And to some extent, like, you do, like, it is business. Like, you have to sell, right? Like, people are just going to come to you. Like, you have to give people a reason for why they should choose you versus the hundreds of other people and options out there on the market. But at the same time, recognize like, hey, if I'm not going to attack this from a place of like, okay, like, how can I just get him on the most expensive retainer and keep him on, versus like, okay, how can I genuinely help him get to a place where like this makes sense for him and it's a solution that he can see an ROI out of and get the most out of, even if it's 7-8 months down the line, like it was with us.
Yeah, I think that kind of pertains to a philosophy that I follow, which is just try to provide value to people, like you said, with their best interest in mind, and not expect anything in return at first. And that may evolve as time goes on and you scale, and, your time becomes, a little bit more scarce because you're working on other things. But I think when you don't have clients at first, you really shouldn't make it all about, like you said, getting someone on the most expensive retainer possible, but just how can I help them? Maybe give them a good rate. And, because people will remember that.
Yeah.
Like, and even if they don't necessarily turn into a long-term client, like I'm sure that because you were there, and like, even if you, like, I do this all the time, like, I'll get on calls with people who might be interested in editing, and it'll be a nice call, but I won't hear back from them for a couple months. And I'll go, well, that was wasted time. Like, that hour that I spent is gone and could have been better spent. But then a year later, they'll email me and they'll say, okay, like, I have a budget now and we're in a better place, and like, 100%. I'd love to work with you. So I think it's an investment in the long term, and it's not instant gratification. And I think that's where that's why it's not popular. And a lot of people they'll kind of disregard that strategy. Because obviously money's important and you want to close deals, but you also just want to, kind of prioritize the human aspect of it. And I think, again, we're talking about the long term and not the short term. That's really the distinction. And that's like paid me dividends over the years, just trying to do that and just be a good person that genuinely wants to help and is not just so concerned about like, am I getting paid a full rate for this? And it's important once you build yourself up. And again, you can like shift that perspective, but that's my advice to people who are just starting, I would say.
No, and I think like that you make such a great point, and it really is something that like, as I get into 2, 3, 4 years of doing what I'm doing, and I'm, thankful and I have the ability to do it for my full-time thing out of university, like relationships are everything, because at the end of the day, like as good as, you may be at your craft and talented as you may be, there's going to be people that are better than you. There's going to be people that are the same as you. There's going to be people that are cheaper than you and maybe have something different to offer for that specific client, but something that I can contribute, I'd say almost all of my success to is my ability to build relationships. And in the company that I'm building now, and it's kind of our main focus and my main focus and security and access control distributor, it's relationships. Like a lot of our competition is companies that are doing $3, $5, $10, $20 million a year and can afford to spend $100,000 a month on ads or SEO or just, staff to retain their customers. And, we wouldn't even have any sort of success if we didn't prioritize those relationships. And especially in an industry where it's like, okay, this is something that these people buy frequently. They have to buy every year, right? Oftentimes it doesn't come down to, who's the cheapest, although like that does play a big role in it, and you have to have that side of the value. Like if you genuinely can have a conversation with them, even though you're only talking to them a couple times, throughout the year, and that they can enjoy that part of their day, and they know, more importantly, you have their best interest in mind and you're in their corner and you're genuinely there to make their life easier, I think that's ultimately what leads to long-term success. And you said something that this past winter was like a huge thing for me. It was like, okay, how do I build something that's long-term? How do I build something that in 5, 10, 15, 20 years I can hang my head on and say that I'm proud I did that. I'm proud I built up this business the right way. And yeah, like maybe building a distributor company, am I sacrificing some short-term gains in terms of what I could be doing, growing the agency, selling coaching, all this stuff like that? Probably. But at the same time, I want to be here in 20 years. And I think, you'll probably agree that most of the people our age that are doing what they're doing now aren't going to be here in 20 years, aren't going to be in this space. And, when you're young like us, when you're kind of reaching different levels of success as you kind of scale up and get older, like really still only have your reputation. And, people pay attention to that. Like, yeah, you may not make the most money, you may not sign the most clients and have the biggest deals and the biggest brands, but at the end of the day, if people like working with you, they know you have their best interests at heart. They know you're genuinely going to do your best for them and do what you can, because you can't promise stuff, right? You see this all the time, the guarantees, we're going to get you 40 leads in 40 days.
Or you don't pay.
Yeah. You don't pay. Like, and I've almost never sold with a guarantee. I think there was one time I sold with a guarantee and the client ended up doing something that, we had asked them to do, but I didn't put it in writing. So at the end of the day, I had to refund that money because the onus was on me. And from that day forward, I was like, all right, never doing guarantees. And I've signed deals where I've looked the client in the prospect in the eye and said, yeah, so actually we don't give guarantees, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and promise you that this is going to 100% get results, but I can point to my track record. I can point it to, okay, is this something you actually believe in the first place? I can work for your business. And I think that's just a good way to start off relationships, right? And it's a good way to set expectations.
Because it's honest.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Yeah. So when we were working together, the main focus was cold email specifically, but cold outreach in general. And I'm not sure, is that the main component of the service that you're offering right now, or?
Yeah. So in our distributor company, ID Access by Lead, it's primarily run through cold outreach. So SDRs, cold calling, you know, we don't do a lot of cold email for that specifically, just because that aspect of relationship building over the phone with these people is big. But, you know, we've tested out a little bit. We'll probably do more of it. I'm a firm believer, and obviously I'm biased. That's how I grew my first business. That's how I'm growing this business. That if you can scale through outbound and you can sell to cold traffic and sell to people that don't necessarily know who you are, you know, your ability to scale within your total addressable market is almost infinite, right? Because then you can ideate the numbers and say, okay, if I turn on a campaign and I'm sending to 10,000 people in, you know, my target market, and I expect to get this many leads, this many book calls, you know, maybe this many closed deals, which leads to X, Y, and Z. And obviously those are going to depend on a lot of different factors within the business and the operation you're running. But the biggest reason why I think it is a viable way to grow a business and why I chose it for my first business, or honestly sometimes why I feel it chose me, is because most businesses don't have a way to attract new business that's not a referral or word of mouth. And you know, although those are great, like I tell almost everyone I've worked with, a referral and a word of mouth is a great lead because of two things. One, they probably trust you and like you, you know, enough to give you money. But two, most of the time that lead doesn't cost you anything. Your cost to acquire on a referral is, you know, net zero. So
right, yeah, that's really that's really the best kind of lead. And I know it's, you know, rare and it's not really scalable, or you can't really systematize that. But when I get on a call with someone who was referred to me, it's almost as if I've known them for years, just because we have this mutual connection that we both trust.
Yeah.
And I just think it's extremely powerful, because like we're strangers, but it's almost as if we've been working together already. And it's almost like, how can you replicate that over, if you're doing like a cold outreach sequence to to build trust? And I guess that's where like a personal brand comes in, because once they discover you, they have to consume your content, and then that trust is developed. But like, sorry to interrupt, but this sort of goes into, and you sort of already touched on it, into my like next question, which is, there's all sorts of ways that you can market yourself, right? Like with organic, you can, depending, it's obviously very industry dependent, but you can go to conferences, you can do paid ads, you can do the email campaigns. So, you know, you already explained what stands out about cold email or cold outreach, but like, what would be your message to someone who's like, okay, like I got to get my marketing together this year, or I got to put together a strategy, and I don't know where to start, just because there's all of these different avenues that you can take. Like, what would your message to be to sort of like get some clarity there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the first thing I would say before anything, and it may sound cliche, but I'll provide some more context as to what I'm trying to get at, is you have to have product market fit, or at least understand that what you are selling is in fact in demand. In my opinion, the best way to do that is cold outreach. If I send 10,000, granted they have to be good, like there's pretty bad cold emails out there, 10,000 cold emails to people, and I don't book one meeting, you know, it's probably not the emails, it's probably what you're selling. Right. So it gives you that ability to test with a sample size that you can't talk to 10,000 people one by one, or at least it would take you a very long time to do that. So I'd always like to say, in terms of marketing, right, you could do the ads, you could do the webinars, the VSLs, all these low ticket, high ticket funnels. There's so many out there, and a lot of them do work. But I think the problem that people get caught up in is like trying to push what they're selling through all these different channels without actually looking at what they're selling. Like,
Yeah.
you have to have a good offer, especially in the way the market is. Like, I don't believe the market's saturated. Otherwise, people wouldn't be making money with it. But I do believe, like, you can't just call someone up or email someone and tell them you're going to do Facebook ads for them and ask them to pay you a $5,000 a month retainer, because it's not 2016 anymore. And I think that being able to stand out and having an offer or servicing that makes someone want to buy from you, or at least makes them interested enough to hear you out, get in a sales call, consume your content, is really where it all starts. So if someone's like, I get to again answer your question, like wondering, okay, how can I get clarity on my marketing? Instead of just throwing $5,000 at a campaign, or hiring the first agency that comes your way, right? Try in some way or form to understand, okay, does the addressable market like what I'm selling? Do they consume it? And if you have a good price, that's why I say, like, I was talking to, someone else yesterday actually at Common that runs kind of a personal branding thing, and they basically only get their business from word of mouth and referral. And that tells me from a marketing standpoint that those leads that are coming in, yes, obviously because of you, but like your product is so good, your offering is so good, you have product market fit that they're coming to you and they trust you. But again, like being able to understand, like, I need to sell something that people want to sell. And when I say that, I don't mean changing, the way you brand or, trying to be different for everyone else. Like, obviously stay true to yourself, but at the end of the day, like, if you're trying to be an economist, if you want to look at it from an economical standpoint, like, you got to sell what the market's demanding. And I've learned that through my time. I'm sure you've learned that through your time. And it doesn't necessarily mean completely throwing out what you're doing and bringing in something new, but maybe you tweak how you're saying something. Maybe you tweak how the content's positioned. Maybe you give some more options in terms of what you can do for certain people in certain situations. But
Yeah, and I think oftentimes you really don't want that to be, you don't want to believe that that's the reason why something's not working, and you're in denial about it because you're so passionate about your offer and what you're building, and it's difficult to remove the emotion from it and to just take a step back and realize, okay, like maybe my product market fit is not where it needs to be, or it needs to be improved. Because I just spent so many hours recording and editing this VSL, and this is going to work just because I believe in it, and I put all this time into it. But unfortunately, like, the market might be telling you otherwise. So, and like you said, it might not be like you could write the best email out there, but, and I did this a couple years ago, actually. I was, really intrigued by online courses and the whole business model of that. Like I took an online course on how to build an online course, and I made one about animation and After Effects. And this was during the pandemic. I did the whole curriculum. I built out the modules and everything. And because I put all that time into it, and I did like a VSL, and I actually I ran YouTube ads and Facebook ads and did a landing page. I did everything. And, I ran ads for like a month, and it really wasn't gaining traction. And then, I started getting more freelance gigs. And so I started putting my priorities towards that, and eventually shut it down. And, granted, I could have done more with the ads. So I don't want to say that I gave up. I just kind of moved on from it. But I think the biggest lesson from that was I didn't do market research, and there really wasn't a good product market fit for what I was trying to sell, regardless of how much I believed in it or how much I convinced myself that it was like the market needed this.
And that's something that, like, you make a very good point. Like, you'll see a lot of, especially, in the agency space. And honestly, part of the reason why I, had to reevaluate what I wanted long term, because it's just so much of it is out there. You're going to see oh, you could start a ecom email marketing company. You could scale to 100K a month at 50% margins. And although, yes, there are outliers. Like I personally know people, individuals my age, Max Sturdivant, someone I'm connected with, that he scaled to $1 million a year at like 20 years old doing ecom email marketing. Now, I think the problem comes when, and I respect him so much, he hasn't done this at all, which could probably be very hard. Most other people in his position are then going to flip and be like, okay, I did this thing. You could just do this. I'm going to sell this course, and, you know, all these people are going to buy it, and you're going to market it in a way that maybe, I don't want to call it scamming, but is going to be somewhat misleading. And it's like, no, those results are not indicative of what everyone's going to do. And I think you see a ton of that out on the market, like, oh, just sell this, like you'll crush it. And it's like, I mean, it's not impossible. Like, you know, there's things that I started a lead generation agency in a time where lead generation was, you know, some people call it saturated, but I saw an opportunity. I signed my first client for $1,500 a month. You know, didn't have a client before that, and he knew that. And again, you talked about it, like I worked my hardest for that client, and I think that's why, you know, he even signed up for me, because he could sense that. But yet again, like there's so many things about an offer. There's so many things that go into an offer that make it attractive to the general population that you're trying to sell to. And I don't think that'll ever change. Like, if you could sell one thing forever, well, you probably wouldn't be working on it. You'd be on a beach somewhere, you know, not talking to anybody because you have quote unquote the secret sauce. But like, I think that's what I love about this game is just constant iteration, even in what the main thing I'm doing now. Like, okay, how can we get more partners to obviously buy from us, but like, how can we build relationships with these people? They've been using the same distributor for the last 25 years, and you know, they think they're getting the best pricing, to think all this stuff. That's not easy to go up against when you have to tell someone, hey, I could beat your price by 25% at times, as well as, you know, give you better service, and I'm genuinely here for you in your corner. Like, it's not an easy thing to do, but at the end of the day, like, I think that's what gets the job done. Like, can you market in a way that effectively speaks to people, but the right people? Because some people just aren't going to be a fit for what you're selling. A big thing for me when I was getting started is I was selling to a lot of the wrong people, and my perception of that was I was bad at sales. And although like I improved my sales, and I always think anyone can get better at, you know, selling their product and positioning it, you got to sell to the right people. And it's a massive thing that you see nowadays. Like, yeah, you just touched on it. Like, people want their thing to work so bad, and so they'll take any call, they'll get on with any lead, and then they have a Rolodex of clients that probably even shouldn't be working with them in the first place, and it just tends to lead to bad things and burnt out business owners and burnt out businesses.
And I think low ticket and high ticket, they have their own difficulties, but especially when you're doing high ticket, it's difficult because if someone's going to be on like a multiple $1,000 a month retainer and it's a really big investment, obviously you need to make sure that you're speaking to the right people, and the people that you're working with can, you know, benefit the most from your offer. So that's just another thing to consider. Kind of like you were talking about, is like when you're starting, you're really hungry, you want to work with anybody. And I think that's good to just like get your feet wet. And like you can learn from every experience that you have, which is like the mindset that I have. So nothing is necessarily wasted. But like eventually you really need to maybe like refine a little bit and say, okay, I really need to qualify this lead before I sign up with them. And that's kind of like a lesson with, you know, and I'll be totally honest, like when I reached out to work with you, I really didn't need the marketing at the time
Yeah.
because I had so much inbound, but
Exactly.
I saw so much potential in you and I wanted to like give you a client and give you like some experience. And I wanted to do that more than I needed the service. And
Yeah.
I think that's why like it didn't really turn into a long-term like
Exactly.
client relationship. And that's fine because, you know, we're doing other things like this and there's still like, there's a great friendship from it. And there's like podcast recordings and, you know, and other connections like down the road and networking and stuff. So, but that's like, I think that's an important lesson that once you get into something, it's like, it might be, and this actually leads perfectly into my next topic, but it might be an uncomfortable conversation to say no up front, but it's an even more uncomfortable conversation to get out of it. Like once you've made a commitment and you might have known on the first call, yeah, this isn't really right, but
Yeah,
I
it's
just
not
want
fit.
the money. So I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
And then it turns into a disaster because like you could have recognized that it wasn't going to be a good long-term partner,
Mhm.
like, or business to work with, but you kind of just said, hey, I don't care. I want to. So
lot of
like you're
people do that.
settling for less instead of trying to like qualify better leads. But
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, just to like to wrap up that kind of goes into my next thing that I wanted to talk about. Because when we were working together, something that I really struggled with, and I know that you could probably tell, was being perceived as needy when
Yeah.
doing cold outreach and following up multiple times and like kind of annoying people by being in their inbox. And I can't be the only person that struggles with
Yeah.
that. So I'd
100%.
love to get your perspective on that. You know, like what frame of mind should you be in? Like if you're going to be doing cold outreach, it's like you said, not everybody is going to want to buy from you. Not everybody is a good fit for you. Even if you have these, you know, algorithms that are placing ads in front of people,
Yeah.
just because they think your ad is irrelevant or they don't want to work with you, it doesn't mean that your offer or your strategy is necessarily bad. It's just, and you know, you shouldn't take that rejection personally.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to just talk about that if, you know, if to insecure business owners or whatever out there
Yeah.
that are
No,
like, you know, if
100%.
someone's going to say like nasty things to you if you email them or like, you know,
Yeah.
why are you emailing me or your offer's not good or good luck with that or are you trying to sell me something like cuz I can't really tell, you know, people will say these things and it can kind of hurt your feelings and
Yeah.
you know, just kind of growing a thick skin or like what would you say to people who are kind of struggle with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd say it's more so of an overarching thing, and then I'll kind of drill down. And I love that you brought that up because it is like, I've seen that with clients. Like, they get shell shocked when they get a negative reply when they've never done something like this. And it's like, I think to be an entrepreneur, to play this game in general, you have to be, or maybe not have to, but you have to work up to a place where you are so good at managing rejection that it doesn't even phase you. And I'm not talking about like, oh, this person said no. I'm talking about like people are like cursing you out. People are like not giving you an edge. I'm talking you've sent thousands of emails. I've had this very early on in my business where you make hundreds of cold calls, and I'm thankful for it because now I have the skill and it pays me, if I'm being quite frank. But no after no after no after no after no, and everything in between, developing a mindset to, okay, that's just another, it's so cliche, but just one, you know, no closer to a yes. Like, full disclosure, last week we had like 3 accounts that we were like very confident we're going to close. And like, obviously anything can happen, but like everything was telling us we're going to close these accounts. And Thursday, I was like, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, both of them didn't close for one reason or another. And it's like, is that going to stop you from running your business? No. Am I going to quit and hang it up and go do something else? Now, no. I'm just going to show up tomorrow. I'm going to put in the same effort. I'm going to do the same things. Obviously, I'm going to adjust accordingly. But the way I view rejection now versus when I did when I was 18, 19, getting into this, and obviously I'm still young. I'm 22, so I don't want to make it seem like I've had 10 years of experience in this. But like, I genuinely just don't care. Someone's like, nope, that's okay. Someone tells me to, F off, whatever it is. Like, honestly, I just laugh. As funny as that might sound, like, I just laugh because I understand, like, first off, there's some people that are just never going to buy from you, no matter what you say, no matter how you are, how good you are at sales, and you honestly shouldn't want to work with those people.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for exposing yourself as a nightmare client before we
yeah,
even
like imagine that person as a client, and
Yeah.
they're paying you money, thousands of
Mhm.
dollars a month to get it.
You got to see it as a blessing.
They'll make
Yeah.
you lose your shirt, and I think going back to your point, like one way people can like understand that is one the mindset too, but like also just view it as an opportunity to get reps. Like if you can get through those no's as quick as possible, eventually someone's gonna say yes. And like, I mean, I've ran through probably millions of cold emails, hundreds of, I don't want to say hundreds of thousands, but like a lot of cold calls in there as well. And you just learn, you gather data. I like to call them data sets. Like you know how to handle certain people, you know how to handle people in certain situations, in certain sales environments. And that's the beauty of what we do, but also knowing like, hey, it comes with this side of the game where, probably 80% of the people you talk to or put your stuff in front of aren't going to buy. And you just have to be okay with that. And that's something that took me a while to learn because it can be defeating. It's like, okay, is what I'm offering, it's that knife's edge where we just talked about like, okay, you have to have something that's worth selling, but also understanding that you're not, Jordan Belfort. You're not going to build this huge aura around you that is close, 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 close. Like
Sell me this pen.
the best closers on cold traffic, because I think that's the golden standard if you want to measure true sales ability, is probably 30, maybe 40%. And like that is a very high close rate to hold. Like that clip is almost 100. You're probably anywhere, especially now, anywhere from 5 to 15%. And a lot of it does depend on how you qualify your leads. And if you're running a big organization, how warm those leads are when they actually get to your sales development reps and your closers. But like, yeah, just being like, if I can handle this rejection, just means I'm closer to a yes. And understanding like something that was for me, it was like, okay, at the end of the day, like I'm not that special. And I try to put myself in the customer's shoes at times because, again, like with anything, there's a good side of this and there's a bad side. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that aren't not good at the cold outreach and not good at the marketing, the direct response marketing, or that are straight up just trying to win in the short term. And people have been hurt by that. People have been let down by someone who they thought was going to be, this next thing, and swore up and down that they were going to crush it for them. And the market's jaded. I'll be quite honest. Like to run a cold email agency, any sort of like B2B service agency nowadays, like one, you just got to be okay with taking beatings from clients. Like it's almost not unheard of, but there's very few agencies nowadays with a client list that they all love and it's all sunshine and rainbows. But two, like understanding, hey, like it's just part of the game. So like, I've even heard of stories where people don't close their first client for 6 months, 9 months. And that's like very realistic. Like that's not unheard of for someone not to close a deal within 6 to 9 months. Like obviously you don't want to go through that, but eventually you're going to take enough data points from that to be able to turn around and sell it. And I'd also say like some people are just more naturally positioned in disposition to sell. Like quite honestly, like I believe that you can learn it to an extent, but if you're an extrovert versus an introvert, that's probably the biggest tell. Like, do you enjoy speaking to other people on a regular basis in uncomfortable environments? Yes or no? All right, there's probably your first answer, and then everything in between that. But I'd say like anyone can sell. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna say everyone can sell well and sell consistently, but if you have a good product and you genuinely have that best person's interest in mind, like I don't see why an introvert, someone who doesn't like being on camera, someone who's not really, used to the getting beaten over the head by hundreds and thousands of leads over a long enough time span and just hearing no so many times, I still think that person can be an okay salesperson, and especially if they're doing founder-led sales or they are in charge of bringing revenue into their business. Like, I still think they can do that. And something that I think personally is a big move is like, okay, if you're not going to take 10 calls a day or you're not sales focused, build a brand.
Yeah.
Build a brand that speaks to people, and I've seen it work so well. I mean, you do it phenomenally, but so many people out there, like, they don't even take sales calls. Like, they understand, okay, maybe the content's a longer game, but in 3 years, yeah, the person might just see you enough, know, like, and trust you, and they'll sign up for, whatever it is you have to offer.
Yeah. One thing that stood out to me when you were, doing your first operation, that, I was your client for, was when you said, okay, this is how I generate leads for myself. So if you do that for yourself and it's the service that you're offering to others, then that does so much without saying anything, because, you're practicing what you preach. And I think when you're on a sales call, that puts you in a really unique position to, articulate your offer. If people can see that you do it yourself, then you believe in it. And I think a big part of, confidence or whatever, when you're on sales calls, for me at least, is like, I really believe in what I do. Like, I believe in the value that I bring to the table. And yes, you should prepare going into a sales call. You should know who you're on the phone with and what they do, and you should be learning about them. But I feel like I don't really have to prepare when I talk about myself, because it's just, I can do that extemporaneously off the top of my head, because that's what it's very difficult to sell yourself and your service if you don't believe in yourself. So I think that's, I guess there's 2 points there, is like practicing what you preach, but also like believing in yourself. And that's a really large component of it to success. But yeah.
No, I think it's you make a very good point. And if we're looking at it from, because I like sales, I like marketing, I'm sure, as you know, and I like to break it down from a technical standpoint. That's part of what we call frame. Like, a closer that's not confident in the product, doesn't care about it, doesn't feel like it's going to work for their prospect, it's very rare that they close deals. Or if they do, they're very few and far between. But I've seen the best closers, I've been closed before on services or softwares or whatever, where, like, you think the guy's the CEO. He's a sales development rep that probably doesn't even talk to the CEO, but, like, at the end of the day, like, his conviction in the product. And I do want to stress, like, this is not conviction as in, like, the Wolf of Wall Street, the only regret you're gonna have. Like, I'm sure we've all seen that. Like, no, this is genuine, like, like, I'm confident in this product. They're able to talk about it. They're able to explain it in a way that makes the prospect make sense for them. They're able to tailor the pitch, or whatever you want to call it, the delivery, to the prospect's needs. And, if they've used it enough, like, it should come through in a sales call. And at the end of the day, like, I've always said, why would someone who is exploring, trying to find a solution to XYZ problem that they're having, pick you or your business if you're not even confident on the sales calls? Because people will be like, well, it's about the prospect, but I would argue, like, you almost have to have the frame. If I'm trusting you to be the expert in something, and you're sitting back like, I don't know, or, I could tell you just aren't convicted in it, like, I'm not going to feel comfortable giving you my money to do this. Like, I want to definitively know that you can obviously do what you say you're going to do, but, like, take my hand, lead me, right? And that's what most people pay for. They pay for not having to do things themselves. And that's why in this world we have, done for you, done with you, and then do it yourself, right? Like, and typically the higher tier of service you go in terms of logistical intensity of what's actually being done, it gets more expensive. It's just how we get into high ticket and things like that. And once again, if you're sitting on a call with someone trying to sell them a $10,000 package for this, that, or the other, and they don't feel like you're convicted, and it doesn't come across, and it doesn't exude that confidence in the product, they're probably not going to buy from you. And I honestly had to learn that the hard way, because the first couple of clients I had, like very early on, I didn't have the data behind me to have the full confidence. I think I had the confidence in myself, and I think that's always been unwavering to, live up to a certain expectation that I set, and be able to achieve the things that I want to achieve. But at the same time, there's been times, and I'm sure you'll agree too, where like, you only have two, you're starting, you only have a client, two clients. You don't have, now that I have the hundreds of thousands of data points to definitively like have confidence in what works and what doesn't. And
like you need proof and case studies and all that.
Exactly. And testimonials and constant strategies and trying stuff and failing and iterating and changing, like hours, hundreds of hours, thousands of hours at this point. I'm sure you're the same thing with videography and editing. Like there comes a point where you're just so confident in it because you've done it so many times. Like I played soccer in college, actually right up the road at Lancaster Bible College. And I wasn't like a star, player. I definitely wasn't. I'll be clear on that. But, like, I don't think about how to make a pass with my right or left foot. Like, I've just done it so many times, and the repetition gives you confidence. So, if I get in a game, and this is a big thing, that our coach taught us, he's like, you shouldn't be panicked when someone's on your back or a defender's closing you down, because you've put in the reps to make a pass under pressure before. And that's why, specifically if I'm pointing to that, like you watch pro soccer, like they rarely ever give the ball away in that setting because they've just done it so many times. And I think it's the same thing with sales calls. Like what I do now is a lot different than the full-scale marketing agency that I was running. And I've kept a couple consulting clients since then. But like if I went on a B2B sales call, I'm not going to say I'm going to close a person, but like I'm very confident that that deal would get done. And I would just hop right into the frame of selling and closing and being able to convey a product or service to somebody, because I've just done it so many times. I've done it hundreds of times, and I know people that have done it thousands of times, and they can quite literally almost close anybody on anything because it's just reps. And the same way we talked about the rejection, like they've just had more times to be rejected.
Just
like
building up that tolerance to it.
Yeah.
So, because it's going to sting at first, and then the more no's you get, the more you kind of laugh. And there's one thing I was going to say earlier was, I think it's like a Gary Vee quote. But it's like, you don't know where people are coming from. Like maybe they're just having a bad day, or they have personal angers and frustrations that they need to, like that's their form of expressing and getting that out of their system, is being mean to you by like responding. And like maybe you just caught them at a bad moment. Like you don't know where people are coming from. And the main thing is just not to take it personally. And I would always feel, personally like attacked if someone didn't want to, like they didn't see value in my service, or they didn't want to work with me. And, I would question myself like, well, is my offer really that good? But it's just not taking things personally is, I think, really important. And it's all about like building that muscle and you're not going to get no's if you don't put yourself out there and try.
Exactly.
So if you're not getting rejected, then like you're not moving, you're not doing anything. So rejection is just an indication that like, while it may be painful at first, it's good pain because you're making progress. You're at least doing something. Yeah,
100%. And I think I want to make a point here, and I know like we're talking about it a little bit, but like at least my generation, our generation, like it's all about. It seems to me that okay, how can I be the most comfortable? How can I have the path of least resistance? How can I have the least rejection possible? Like I've literally heard that like I just don't like rejection, whether it's a job interview, whether it's relationships, whether it's social friend groups, whatever it is. Like my generation is in a place where people don't like rejection. Like I was talking with a friend the other day at a run, and we talked about like why most people don't make content, because I meet so many cool new people now that I'm out of school, that I'm like, either I see them making content or I don't see them making content. And it's like, I think that it's so important for my generation, anyone that's younger, either if you're getting into business, whatever you're doing, if you're trying to make a fitness brand influencer or whatever, like just do it, because at the end of the day, like you can't have the good without the bad. Like you're gonna have success, but it's not gonna come with rejection, and probably 2 to 3, 5 times more rejection than the successes. And then understanding that like nobody actually cares as much as you think they care. Like I remember when I made my first landing page on car.io, and it was horrible. I'm not a web designer or anything like that. Like thankfully I pay people to do that now. But like I was so scared that like my college classmates were gonna see it, and like people were gonna see it, and it took me like a week to like actually upload it and like publish it, because I was like, it was embarrassed. Like I wasn't embarrassed, but like at the time I was like, oh, what are they gonna think? Like, are they gonna laugh? And like honestly, some of them did. And in that moment, like yeah, I could have gotten like embarrassed and whatever, but I was just like, it's part of it, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm thankfully in a spot where this is what I do for my work full time, and I enjoy it, and it gives me a lot of freedoms and things that most people can't do. But that would have never happened if I would have shut everything down and turned it all off the minute the first person saw the first ever website I made, which was pretty bad. Like, okay,
Yeah. Well,
like, it was not
I think
good.
the lesson there is, like you said, you often think that people are thinking about you all the time, and like, wow, Isaac's starting that landing page, and you just think that that's all they're thinking about,
Yeah.
like all the time, when
Yeah.
really it's one thought in one instance when they're seeing it, and they'll probably never think of it again.
Exactly.
So when you think of things that way, and then there's also the saying that like most of the time you're only going to be criticized by people who are doing less than you.
Exactly.
So
100.
at least you
Yeah.
took
Something I was gonna say.
action. Like with podcasting, that's
Yeah.
something like, I often think, oh, I'm going to set this up. I'm going to record a podcast and maybe 2 people will listen to it. So why is it worth doing?
Yeah.
And other people might look at me and say, oh, well, he only has 100 followers, or no one's listening to that. I don't know why he's wasting his time. But, at least I had the initiative to set it up and make it happen, because that's more than you're doing.
Yeah,
So like,
100%.
that's also how you have to look at it.
And I think like you make a very good point about like you'll never hear someone criticizing you that's doing as good or better than you. Like almost all the time it's someone who is doing very little or not doing anything. And at the end of the day, like I was talking about my friend about this the other day running. I was like, most of the time that person has something that either they're insecure about or they're not confident in, and that's just unfortunate for them, right? But like I've luckily gotten to a place where like it doesn't affect me, like maybe time to time, but like I don't spend the majority of my time or day thinking about what other people are going to think, because like you said, most of the time it's just a one thought and they're going on to something else, or like people have their own things to worry about. At the end of the day, like the most prominent people out there, if you're an influencer or whatever, if that's your thing, like they get the most criticism. Like you watch these reality TV shows and people are losing it over what the public thinks about them, and it's like the good always comes with the bad. You can't have
It's all part of it.
your cake and eat it too, to some extent. So it's a good point.
Very well said. Well, that was going to be my last sort of question. I think we've pretty much answered it, but do you have any other thoughts on like just entrepreneurship in general? Just kind of, because that's been a common theme on this podcast, is pretty much everyone who I've spoken with, at least in the past year, has, they're all people who are working for themselves, doing their own thing. And, my hope is that people who listen, it will inspire them to actually like see that it's possible. Cause maybe they just graduated from school and they're, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with 9 to 5s. Like because entrepreneurship's not for everybody, and I have zero judgment for people that don't want to do it. But I know there's a lot of people who are probably intrigued. Like, I could do freelancing full time, or like I could at least start this business, and they're discouraged and they don't want to do it. And, as someone who, I've been basically working for myself is all I've ever known. I mean, I've been doing it for 5 years. So that's like, I don't know anything different, but I know you just graduated this year from college and now you're officially full-time into it. So, and I know you've had experience while you were in college, so that sort of helped you like ease into it. But like, do you have any just final thoughts on if anyone is interested in, pursuing anything in entrepreneurship, building something for themselves? And because, it's, from my perspective, it's difficult, it's stressful, but it's a
Yeah.
good kind of stress. And it's, I wouldn't be doing anything else. So like,
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I'd say, I guess the first point I would make is, and this maybe falls under like an ideological thing, but honestly, like something for me that's really been important, and obviously I'm young. I hope I have a long life and, fruitful life. But if I was to die tomorrow or on the way home from here, knock on wood, I wouldn't have any regrets about how I'm living my life, how I chose to do things, how I'm choosing to do things. Like obviously, like there's gonna be things that you're gonna want to work on and improve on and get better at and be more intentional about. But like I think at the end of the day, it's important to be able to live a life where you don't have any regrets. There's no, oh, I wish I would have tried this. Like I hear that so much now that I'm out of school, from people that are, doing whatever, like, oh, I wish I would have gone after this in college, or I wish, when I had more time to pursue something, I would have done it. And it's like, it's all sad to hear, because like most people, like that's going to be the rest of their life. Like they're going to do whatever they do and they're never really going to go after it when they had the opportunity. And like I said, I don't want to die one day feeling like, oh, I wish I could have, or I wish I would have gone after something or tried something. Because to me, like if I try something and it doesn't work, and I've tried a lot of things that have not worked and tried a lot of things that have worked, at least I can rest assured knowing, okay, I actually did everything I could. I played college soccer for 3 years, right? My career on paper did not go how I thought it would have went, how I wanted it to go. But, I didn't play my fourth year to pursue other things and kind of just take a different path and a step back from it. End of the day, I don't regret anything about, how I operated during those 3 years. I was very intentional, got to know my teammates, learned what it was to be a part of a team, and put other people before yourself for the good of a common cause, and worked my butt off. Like, honestly, probably one of the hardest workers I know on that team. And it's something I pride myself on, and not in a look at me, look what I'm doing, but like genuinely, okay, if I leave it all out there, as people say, like, I don't have anything to hang my head about. I don't have any, man, I wish I should have done this. Like, looking back, man, I could have been a little more disciplined. Like, that to me haunts me, because there has been times in my life, high school, where I didn't do everything that I could have or I should have. And like, I never want to have that feeling. So in entrepreneurship, if you're thinking about getting into it, thinking about trying to start a business, freelance, whatever it is, I'd say like, just have that mindset. Like, okay, even if I do this and it doesn't work, or maybe it does, or I just find out this is not for me at all, because this is not for everyone. I will be honest about that. Like, there's a lot of aspects of it that some people are better suited to do other things for.
You never would have realized that if you didn't try.
You never would have realized it
Yeah.
if you didn't try. And like, I look at it two sides of the coin, kind of where I knew like, okay, like, dude, I just want to do something different than like most people are doing in college or getting out of college. Was like going into my junior year, and I had an internship, and it was awesome. Great organization. My parents worked there, and it was phenomenal. But it was just like, it wasn't for me, and I did not want to do that internship at all. I wanted to do something else. But I'm actually glad I did it, because that taught me, or showed me, I should say, what I didn't want to do, or what the necessary path that I didn't want to follow. And it led me into what I was eventually first started doing, which led me into my first agency, which led me into the, monetizable skill sets that I'm using now in my second company. And it's just something that to me is important. Like, don't have any regrets is kind of, I guess, the phrase people would say. And then the second thing I would say is, I think my generation is really lucky. Like there's so much out there in terms of, you know, being able to learn on your own and not needing to either pay a ton of money or have it lucky or have everything handed to you, or honestly work really, really hard for things like our parents and their parents had to. Like, it's going to sound so cliche, but a lot of what I learned, I'm sure a lot of what you learned was from YouTube. Like,
Yep.
there's a ton of free content on YouTube, and if you're willing to sit in your room and sit there with your notepad at 18 whatever years old and, you know, just dive down the rabbit hole, as I call it, like, I think we're really lucky to have that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we've never lived in a time, we've never had a time where you could get on your phone, your laptop, and figure out how to do something in, you know, in this world, learn something well enough to get paid for it. So I'd say that. And then, like, don't be afraid to, like, reach out to other people that have done it and that are doing it. Like, I used to have this, like, weird thing that, like, oh, like, business owners won't, like, talk to me. Like, they're just so busy, or, like, they're just special people because they were able to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like,
Yeah.
one, like, they're just, like, normal people. Obviously, like, they have some sort of skill set or talent that's gotten them to what they're doing. But one, they're just normal people. And, like, something that I have always found, and I continue to do to this day, is, like, people that have doing what I want to do or have been where I want to be, just, like, you know, asking for their advice. And not, like, asking, like, oh, give me this or tell me the secret, because it's no secret. But, like, honestly, just wanting to learn. And people love that. Like,
Yeah.
You'd be surprised the amount of times, like, people have, you know, said to me, like, yeah, I just love being able to, like, pour into the next generation or give advice on XYZ. But, like, once again, like, it's just about, like, putting yourself out there. Like, hey, could we grab coffee? I'd love to learn more about, you know, what you're doing. Hey, could we do lunch or whatever it is? It'd be awesome to hear about, you know, how you got into some marketing and kind of what you're taking with. And that was honestly what I did. Like, there were a couple of people that graduated from my university that I did that with. Like, I went to coffee, and a few of them are business owners in Lancaster, and it's cool to see, like, as I kind of pick up and get into those same things,
Yeah.
you know, like, hey, like, I could put my finger on people that were like, yeah, dude, go for it, or, you know, gave me certain pieces of advice. So I'd say, like, don't be afraid to reach out to people. And then the last thing I'll say, and maybe this is not something people are going to want to hear, I can all but guarantee you it's going to take you longer, and it's going to be a lot harder than you thought it was going to be. I'm learning this to this day. I don't think that I could stress enough. Like, and there's going to be times where you win and you have quick success, but this game is something where, you know, if you want to be in it for the long haul, if you want to do right by other people and genuinely help other people and help them change their businesses, and as a byproduct of that, change their life, you know, it's not going to be easy, right? There's going to be ups and downs. There's been times where I've spent, you know, more money than I probably should have on, you know, something that I perceived as an investment for my business. But, like, honestly, like, you're going to have times like that. And I'm sure I'll have times like that going forward. Like, the further you get into this and the more success you have, there's always going to be more lowers. Like, there's going to be these hills and valleys, and hopefully it starts to plateau. And that's what I'm starting to see now, is like, okay, like, it's consistent. It allows me to look at, like, okay, what's the next step? How do we get to the next level? But, like, it really is a lot harder, and it takes a lot longer than you think. But I also think, like, that's the beauty of it. Like, how many times, I'm sure, have you gone through something, or you've lost a client, or whatever the situation is, but you look back over the last 5 years, like, you've been doing this, and you're like, man, look how I've grown as a person. Look how I've grown as a, you know, friend, whatever it is, spiritually. I think it's like, if you want to grow as a person, be an entrepreneur, because it'll force you to grow. And I know, obviously, I'm young, and most people don't even know that I'm 22 because of the way they carry themselves, just the things I do. But honestly, it's because I think getting into entrepreneurship made me realize that I had to adapt very quickly and get to a level of maturity that, you know, maybe I wasn't quote unquote ready for at the time.
Yeah, it's a totally different approach than
it's so different. So
than the traditional path.
yeah, those are the three things I'd say. But yeah, like obviously I'm biased. You know, I love what I do. I'm very fortunate to be in the position I'm in. I know like you feel the same at the ages that we are. But like, yeah, I love it. I think it builds character. And at the end of the day, if it's not something you want to do, or it is something you want to do, you're never really going to know until you give it your best effort and best shot. So
I love it. Very well said. And I totally agree. And I mean, you know, from my perspective, just, you know, what I would say about it is it's an incredible time to be alive.
Yeah.
And I don't think we really take it for granted. Like, you can have a laptop and an internet connection and make a great living for yourself, like 100%. doing good work and having the flexibility to, you know, I've been traveling a lot the past 3 years, like just, you know, by myself, because I do mostly remote work. I can work from anywhere. I've been all over the country, you know, international even, and I've just really tried to take advantage of that unique lifestyle like that I have and that I've established. And I've thought a lot about that. Like, hey, if I'm spending money on this trip, or, you know, I'll edit from this part of the country for a weekend or whatever. And, you know, I'm still working. I'm not really taking time off, but it's like Brian, who I had on a previous episode, he's like, it's not work-life balance, it's work-life integration. Yeah. So like you know, and I've thought a lot about that. Like, man, I spent money on that trip. I could play it safe, and I could just, you know, like edit from home like this weekend, but I really want to do this. But I've thought about it, and I'm like, I won't regret any of that.
Exactly. No, 100%. And I think like the traveling, you made a good point. Like last year I did a lot of traveling because it was the first time, like, you know, for my last year of school, I went online. So I was able to start to ramp up working more so on my business. But like just the opportunities that provided me. I mean, I was to Mexico in Tulum. I was in Europe. I did that with a couple of buddies, down and back to Florida a ton. And it's just like, you know, obviously I think there's a time and place for everything in life. Like you're not doing that when you have a family necessarily. Yeah. Which is why I think like, you know, being able to being afforded the luxury of working from wherever, as long as you have Wi-Fi, like, you know, I grew up traveling, and my parents always took me and my brother places when we could to see different cultures and experience different things. So it's something that's like, it's well worth the investment for me in the lifestyle. I don't even really want to call it a lifestyle, just like the line of work career that we're in allows you to do that. And I always think, you know, if you can get out and see something different while continuing to earn, you know, money and support yourself, and hopefully one day support a family off of it, it's going to be well worth it in the long run.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for, you know, suggesting the idea and taking the time to sit down. You know, I love your perspective on everything, and, you know, you've been a great inspiration, and, you know, I'm so glad that we could, you know, get connected and record this. If people want to see the work that you're doing or follow you, where are the best places?
Yeah, I'd say if you want to kind of see what we're doing, ID Access by Leative, that's our distributor company. It's kind of, like I said, the big thing. I do some side, more so consulting things for the marketing, because obviously I've come up in that. You do that, follow me on LinkedIn, Isaac Kauffeldt, or Instagram, Isaac Kauffeldt _22 is what I'm trying to be better about posting more things on there, really just to kind of share what I'm doing, share what's worked for me, what hasn't, and the journey I'm on. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate your friendship and, you know, the work that we've done, and I'm sure, you know, it'll lead to hopefully more podcasts and more, you know, I'll see you around at the Run Club, I'm sure, as well. So thank you.
Baby. Thanks, kid.